Hi, I'm Melissa Franks, your on-call COO, and you are here at the Opt-in podcast where we go from surviving to thriving in business. And today, right now, we are going to answer the following question. How do I know I am doing the right thing in my business? How do I know? How do I know I'm making the right decision? How do I know I'm choosing the right employee? How do I know I'm betting on the right thing? These are questions that I have been asked in the last 72 hours by a variety of business owners. The businesses are all incredibly different. They sell different things. They service different ideal clients. Literally, no two are the same. They are not competitors in the slightest. And every single business owner that I talk to, and let me tell you, it's randomly because I'm recording this on a Monday. So this was like over my weekend, friends, that I am talking about. Every single one was at a place where they had to make a decision about something and they just didn't know how to figure out if they were making the right thing. And the good news is I'm going to give you the formula today for you to figure out if you're headed in the right direction. Sound good? All right. So I don't have any materials today. I don't even have the notebook that I normally have in my hands. We're just going off script because these were our organic, authentic conversations that I had with everybody. And what I want to give you just a little insider tip for right now is that the approach that we're going to talk about is incredibly similar to the approach that I use when I do annual and quarterly planning inside of businesses just like yours. Literally. Right now, a limited amount of you have the ability to schedule 2025 planning sessions with me, half-day workshops. And what we do is we dive super deep into the framework that I'm just going to touch the surface of today for decision making. And we use that to build your strategy and plan for the upcoming year. We don't just talk and discuss and look at in the rearview mirror and figure it out. We actually use a specific framework so that you can have confidence that what you're setting out to do, what you want to achieve, is reasonable, realistic, and doable based on the way that you put things out in front of you. Sound good? We are going to break it all down right here. The framework is something you are going to learn before the end of this podcast. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, I need to preface this with the following. The principles of how a business runs, the structure for how a business is set up is the same. It does not matter what type of business you have. In fact, even nonprofits follow the same principles and the same structures. Yep, nonprofits do too. The application of the framework I'm going to be talking about today, now that is dealer's choice. You get to decide the answers to the questions. You get to decide the details. And so while the principles and the structures of business are always the same, no matter what business we're talking about, the application of that inside of your business is unique. So I just want to dispel the concern that you had at the outset that I was about to go off brand and tell you that this framework and this workshop and this thing is going to solve your problems. Listen, I absolutely stand by that every single business is unique and different, which means that any sort of standard, traditional, etc. tool, framework, methodology out there requires some creative finesse in order to ensure that it works inside of your business. And that is true here. But we're going to start at the basics. And what I want to remind you right now is that at the very core of your business, you are selling something to somebody else. You are selling something to somebody else. So before you get to a decision, before you get to decide if you're going to hire that team member, before you do any of that, the very first thing that you need to say is, what do I sell and who do I sell it to? And you need to be crystal clear on this answer. Because if you cannot be clear at this specific point, it's going to make indecision and decision fatigue a reality in your business. Do I sound dramatic? I might be a little bit dramatic, and I could not be more serious if I tried. You have to have precise, pristine clarity about what you sell today and who you sell it to and what you will be selling in fill in the time frame and to whom. So if you are planning to sell something different in 2025 than you are today, and you're trying to make a decision for 2025, then you need to answer the question, what am I planning to sell in 2025? And to whom? Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Pretend like you're in the Monopoly jailhouse until you get this question answered. And see, this is why this is so important. And I know I'm going to beat a dead horse on this for a minute, and you're just going to have to go with it with me. Okay? Because what you're selling and who you're selling it to touches every single bit and piece of your business. That clear definition informs everything else. Not your mission, not your vision, not your systems and processes. The fundamental, what am I selling? Who am I selling it to? That's what it is. So the very first thing that you have to do is you have to look at what your business model is. Because that's really what that is. I didn't ask you what your business model was because I knew you'd crinkle your forehead and then would turn off the podcast, don't want to go. What I'm really asking you is, what's your business model? What is it? What are you selling and who are you selling it to? And then the next question after that is, and how do they get it? How do you fulfill whatever? How do you get it in their hands? Are you selling something physical and you ship it to them? Are you teaching them something and they get an online course? Are you coaching? Are you actually working inside of their business? And so they realize the fulfillment of your offer through you doing actual work. Whatever it might be, how do they get it? Because your business model is, what are your products? Who are your consumers? How are you fulfilling? And then you get some bonus points if you can identify where you're constrained. So I'm selling a physical product and I'm constrained by my ability to fulfill in foreign countries. I'm selling a physical product and I'm constrained by my inventory. I'm selling a physical product and I'm constrained by a shelf life. Maybe it's something that is perishable. I can go on and on and on and on, but what you want to know is, what am I selling? What's my product? Who's my consumer? How am I going to fulfill or distribute? I can use that word too. What are my constraints? That's your business model at the very basics. Now, it is significantly more complicated than what I just laid out, but we're using this for decision making. We're not using this for annual planning. We're not using this for strategic planning. So the first thing you do, what's my business model? Okay. The next thing that you need to ask yourself very, very clearly, what's my sales strategy? How am I going to sell? Am I going to go to trade shows? Am I going to go to conferences? Am I going to do infomercials? Am I going to get a billboard? Am I going to start a podcast? Am I going to depend on email and text messaging marketing? How are you planning on selling? What's the plan? And this is important because what you need to know is, am I going to rely on traditional marketing, which is advertising and PR, right? To name a few. Marketing is much broader than that, but am I going to rely on marketing to communicate my sales message and generate sales? Am I going to do something? Am I going to host an event? Am I going to go to events? Am I going to speak? What am I going to do to generate sales? And then as you start to understand how you are going to approach sales, then you need to identify what expertise and who you need involved. If you say that you're going to put all of your eggs in the basket of PR and advertising, do you know how to do that? Do you need to bring on somebody that does? Do you need an agency? Like how do you make that machine work? And what are you expecting the results to be from that? If you are planning to have a bunch of live events and talk to people in person and attend trade shows. And okay, so what does that look like? What does that mean for you? And as you start to look at all of these various ways that you could sell, you have to put that in the context of your business model. So here's all of the various ways that I can sell. I can sell on social media. I can sell in person. I can sell at an event. I can pay for ads. I can on and on and on and on, right? I can do partnerships. I could literally do this all day, folks. I'm not going to. How are you going to sell? And then you say, okay, so based on all of these sales approaches I'm going to do, spoiler alert, I recommend you start with one and get excellent at it, and then bring on more people to help you do more than one. But that's besides the point. That is not today's podcast. As you figure out how you're going to sell, then you go back and you look at your business model and you say, okay, so this is the thing I'm selling, and this is who I'm selling it to. So what happens? Where are my sales constrained? Remember, we asked that question around where are you constrained from a business model perspective? And then you ask the question around where am I constrained with sales? Maybe you're constrained by budget. Maybe you have a limited budget to spend on PR and advertising. Maybe you're constrained on the number of events that you can physically attend. Maybe you're constrained because you're the only salesperson and you can only do so many things at once. Where is your sales cycle constrained? Okay, so then you get a really clear picture of this is how I plan to sell. This is where my constraints are. So this is as much as I can put into the sales machine. And what that will do is it will allow you to kind of look over your shoulder at your business model and say, so if I'm able to do all of this and all of these sales mechanisms produce X amount of buyers, can my business model support what I'm doing? And it can be that the answer is yes, and it can be the answer is no. And let me give you an example. So let's say that what you are selling relies on your specific time. You're a coach, which means that you coach the humans that come in. And your plan is that you're going to host an event. You're going to host an event and you're going to get a bunch of new clients from that event. But the thing is you don't know how big the event should be. Should the event be 10 people? Should it be 50? Should it be 500 people? Well, if your sales mechanism is this event and you're not constrained by budget or your time or whatever, because it's a one-shot thing, right? If you're not constrained there, then what you have to do is you have to look back at your business model and go, oh, as much as a 500-person event sounds phenomenal, I can really only sell 10 of my offers to those 500 people before I sell out. So does it make sense for you to spend money on a 500-person event when you know you can only offer 10 of them to work with you? This is where rationalization comes into play. So what I just did is I demonstrated to you just how 2 pieces of the framework will help you make a decision. And in this case, you had declared that your sales mechanism was an event, right? And what you didn't know, the decision you had to make was how big was the event going to be. All you had to do was go back and look at your business model because you were so clear on who you were selling. You were so clear on what you were selling, who you were selling it to, and how you were going to fulfill it, that you were able to leverage that constraint and identify where your sales mechanism was constrained to, okay? So those are the first 2 pillars, your business model and your sales strategy. And then once you are clear on your sales strategy, then you develop your marketing strategy. And now notice, the word that I used was marketing. Marketing is so broad. It means so many things. Most people, when they say marketing at this point, they're talking about advertisements. So cool. You have your sales strategy. What's your advertisement strategy? What's your PR strategy? Do you know what your PR strategy is? It's how your personal brand is known. Public relations. What's that strategy? What is your email marketing strategy? What's your text marketing strategy? What's your social media marketing, free content? What's on and on and on? Do you have print ad? Are you going to put up a billboard? What's your marketing strategy? And again, the marketing strategy can never be decided until you know your business model and you know your sales strategy. Because if you're planning to sell in events and only in events, and those events have a constraint, which is time, because they happen on a specific day at a specific time, their location potentially, maybe they're in person and there's a specific location. Maybe they have limited capacity, so you can only put so many people in them. There's a whole bunch of things around there. So when that is known, then when you look at marketing, if you're trying to only fill a 50-person event and you are marketing in every possible direction, you're doing advertising, you're doing email campaigns, you are sending out text campaigns, you've got lawn signs, you asked a friend to put it up on the billboard down the street, like on and on and on and on, and it's only 50 people. Is that really the right decision? I'm guessing no. So you see, when your question becomes, what do I do for marketing? Then you look over and you say, well, how am I planning to sell? And what makes the most sense? Okay. And then as you start to look at this ecosystem together and you go, well, this is what I'm selling, this is who I'm selling it to, and this is my constraint, and this is how much of something I can sell at a given period of time or a given year. And this is how I plan to sell, and this is how I plan to market it. Then, friends, you need to ask yourself, what's the design of your business? So you've thought in your head all of these things. You've run the numbers. We didn't even talk about the budget and the financial plan. We can get to that if you want, but I'm not planning on talking about it today. But that's off to the side. And that's something that we go into significantly more depth around during your planning workshop. But now you start to think about, what's my business model? How is my business set up? How many people do I need working here? If I plan to increase the number of widgets that I sell this year by 10%, what do I need to do? And this is where you break it all down. This is where systems and processes come in. This is where people and technology come in. How am I going to do customer service? How am I going to do fulfillment? How am I going to retain these clients? How am I going to capture new attention and new buyers? How does this all work together? So when you get to the place where you're like, should I hire somebody? What you're able to do is say, let's say that you say, should I hire somebody for social media? And all you have to do is say, well, as a part of my marketing strategy, it is that I build my personal brand. And as a part of building my personal brand, that means I need to be on social. And so as a part of my sales strategy, getting business through being known and getting speaking gigs is really important. And so therefore, I need the social media person. Whereas if you say, you know what, I'm doing these live events and my strategy is paid ads, and I can really handle like the free content that I do on social because it's really not that important. Maybe that's a no-go, but maybe what is a yes we need to do is hiring an ad agency to manage your ads. You just never know. When you get your pillars in place, when you understand what you're selling, who you're selling it to, and what your constraints are, when you understand what your sales process and approach is going to be, when you understand how you're going to be leveraging marketing, and I guess we can spend a second on it, when you understand what your budget is, when you understand very specifically, this is how much it's going to cost for all of this stuff to happen in order for me to get one sale, and I plan to get X amount of sales, therefore this is how much revenue I'm going to get, and this is how much I can spend, and this is how much profit is in the business. When you have that financial picture that's tied to your business model, that's tied to your sales strategy, what's tied to the marketing, and then you layer in how we fulfill, so how we run the business, how we keep everybody happy, you get that going, right? So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're watching me spin a whole bunch of plates, a whole bunch, and you know what starts to formulate in front of you, a well-oiled, you see, when you take all of the pillars of a business and you start layering them on top of each other, and then you start moving them in tandem, the machine starts to function. And it's only when you look at one in isolation and you decide to start moving that part faster than all of the rest that the machine breaks, the wheels fly off, the machine snaps in half and things stop working. But this is the other thing that is true about a machine. When you turn it on, when you flip the switch, there's always one thing that moves first. And specifically in business, what that is the model. The one plate that starts moving first is, what do I sell? Who do I sell it to? How do they get it? What's the constraint? That's the first plate. We can argue if marketing or sales starts to move first. But if you fire up the machine and you get sales going before you get that first plate going around, what do you sell? Who do you sell it to? And how do you fulfill it? And what's the constraint? Your machine's going to break. It's going to malfunction. It's going to literally spit metal and rubber and something in your eye. Order matters until it doesn't. And in this case, the order always starts with, what am I selling? Who am I selling it to? How am I giving it to them? And what is the constraint? You can have $1 million in seed money. You can have $5 million in seed money. And if you do not have clarity around that very, very specific first step, you will waste that money. You will never make it back in your business. You will have a failed business from jump, because that is the point of origin. So when you're making decisions, when you've had a business for years, when you are at a fork in the road and you're not sure what to do, you have to go back to home base. You have to go back to that very first step. Maybe you turn the machine off for a second. And then the first thing you do is you start to spin that first plate. You gain clarity. You make sure that it is working like a well-oiled machine, that cog. What do I sell? Who do I sell it to? How do they get it? What's the constraint? You go back to the beginning. And then once you are grounded in that basis, you can make any decision that I want. You can decide if you want to bring on an investor. You can look at your financials and decide if you want to go into a new business segment, but you have to have a point of origin and clarity. And now you absolutely can expand your business model. So I'm not advocating that you only sell one thing to one ideal client, you only fulfill it one way, and you keep the constraints for the rest of your life. You can sell more things to different people, and the process is always the same. What will cause you problems down the road is if you start introducing new things that you want to bring into the market. So if you start selling new things, if your offers are different, if your products are different, and you don't go through these steps that I just talked about. I'm going to sell A. Now I'm going to sell B. Do not make the assumption that B is going to be identical to A, because it is not. Because it is not. Unless you are literally talking about the exact same shirt in two colors, which some of you might be. Even then, I would argue that colors sell differently, but don't get me on a tangent. Even then, you have to look at all of the dimensions of the business. You have to think it all the way through. How do I go from wanting to offer this into the marketplace to doing it? And who do I offer it to? How do I give it to them? How do I make sure that they're aware? How do I sell it to them? How do I keep them coming back for more? You have to look at your business through that framework. And then when you do, then you can start to ask, well, if I want to expand my team, how many more of these things do I have to sell in order to be able to afford that? Can I do it? Are there people that want it? Is there a constraint holding me back? And if the answer is, I can do it, there are people that want it, and there is no constraint, then what you get to say is, how am I going to use that marketing machine and how am I going to use that sales machine to generate the revenue so I can hire the team? It always comes back to the very beginning, though. Always. I want to replace myself in the business. How do I do it? Okay, cool. How many more of these things do you need to sell, and can you? to replace yourself financially. All right, we got the math. Then you've got to look over at the sales machine. Who's going to sell it? How are they going to do it? How's that going to look? Is that going to work? How long is it going to take to build that process? How does it go? And how are we going to change our marketing strategy as a result of it? Right? Everything changes and turns once you go back to ground zero, once you go back to home base and you verify that you can do it. So the moral of this story, and I wanted to keep this relatively short and sweet, is if you are trying to make a decision in your business, the very first thing that you have to get clarity about is, what am I selling? Who am I selling it to? And how are they going to get it? And what are my constraints? How many can I sell? What's in my way? What will cause fulfillment to be challenging? Whatever it might be. That's where you ground yourself. And then you start to bring it to life. How am I going to market? How am I going to sell it? How am I going to provide great service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to start at the very, very beginning and be clear and unwavering. And every decision that you make, every system that you define, every employee that you hire, you must go back to that starting point and set, is it aligned with the business model? Will it enable XYZ goal and keep true to the business model? And if the answer is no, then the answer is you don't do the thing. That might be good for your friend down the street who is a brick and mortar entrepreneur, but it's not good for you who is the online business owner. So this is just a taste of what we start to look at and dive into in the planning sessions. We spend a good amount of time looking at your historical financial figures because numbers don't lie. And they tell us exactly what decision-making you were doing in the business in the past and how well it worked for you. And what I can tell you is that it will identify where you have gaps in clarity around that very first step. And what's really cool is that once you understand what happened in the past and you gain clarity about where you're headed, you can build an amazing business machine where all of the cogs are spinning in tandem together and can move at incredible speed. But it all starts with that very specific clarity around the business model. And that's what we do in the planning sessions. And not only do we get that clarity, we then build a plan to get the machine moving as fast as possible. And that plan gives you specific goals and measurements and tactics. And it all starts with, what am I selling? Who am I selling it to? How are they getting it? Where am I constrained? So if you think that you could use a little bit of clarity in your business so that you can propel yourself forward to the 7, 8, or 9-figure club in 2025, click the link in the show notes. Spaces are super limited. They're going to go really fast. Until next time, you know you're wise, you're strong, you're capable, and I believe in you.